How about, finally, let's say we've got, we were talking about a lean startup. We've got a lean startup. It scales properly using lean management principles. Where should we locate it? Onshore, offshore? At the conference now, there's been talk about lean shoring. I think, I don't know, I think you've all used the word. So what is lean shoring? Jim?
Well, I think the question is for a given group of customers that you hope to work with to solve their problems for a long period of time, what's the correct place to locate each of the activities required to solve their problems? Okay? And we've had, of course, we know the history of the last 20 years of wage arbitrage, in which some CEO said to some head of purchasing, source 20% of our buy from China within 3 years. There's a metric, by the way, that's very simple. Don't tell me how you're going to do it, just do it. And that is an understandable thing to happen in the human community. But we've now sort of exhausted. It partly turned out that when you finally got around to calculating total cost, the saving wasn't what you thought it was going to be. And then it also turns out to be hard to manage strangers effectively. And it turns out also to be pretty tiring to have to spend all of your time going back and forth to opposite sides of the world. So now there is a rethink going on. And one bad result of the rethink would be to bring activities back to North America and to do them in the same crummy way that we did before we sent them off somewhere else. So there's a lean opportunity there. But at a higher level, there is a real need to think, again, for a group of customers that have a problem of some sort that we, as a provider, are going to try to solve. And we're going to do this, we hope, on a continuing basis over a long time. Where should we locate what in order to do that? Mm-hmm. And that's a question that you find hardly any organization has really systematically tried to tackle, and we hope they will. So when we've been talking about lean shoring, we've been saying it's more than geography. It's really almost a state of mind with regard to the stance toward the customer and how you're going to help the customer solve their problem. Working backwards to then say, well, where should we be located, different activities to do that. I'm happy, delighted, the onshoring people are now trying to talk about, the reshoring people talk about total cost of ownership, and that's a great thing. Amazing that big companies can't do simple math. They can only do functional math, not total business math. So this is good, but I do worry about, again, doing this in this quick time frame. Mm-hmm. That we're going to come up right now with the answer, change everything. Mm-hmm. Well, then guess what? 5 years later, well, it turns out that wasn't really quite the answer, and you just keep on shifting. Toyota, our friends Toyota, under tremendous criticism during the 4 or 5 years of the really high yen. Why don't you completely get out of Japan? Do it right now, immediately. Go to a harbor or an airport and transfer everything to the lowest wage point. But this is completely ludicrous. You can't build a lean enterprise overnight with strangers. Mm-hmm. So you have to take the long view rather than the short view. So at least what I'm saying about lean shoring is let's look at total cost, but let's look at it in the long view. Mm-hmm. That it does require some continuity. A whole lot of people have got to get to know each other, find a way to have these conversations, different levels about what to do. That's not the work of a week or a month. It's not an overnight activity at all. And so how do we learn a way of thinking for the long term about how to solve the customer's problem? And to give it a name, we'll call that lean shoring.
It raises an interesting question about purpose again. If an organization had the purpose of making a lot of money quickly, then they don't have to worry about that. So if we're talking about establishing organizations that provide some good to society for their employees, their customers longer term, then that leads you down a different path in terms of making these kinds of decisions. And that wasn't in the calculations that companies were making many times these past 20 years.